Welcome to What's Your Process? Today, I'm joined by Christina Garnett, founder of Pocket CCO, host of Fan of the Fans and the Women's MBA podcasts, the author of Transforming Customer Brand Relationships, Use Emotional Connection to Build Loyalty, which comes out in September of this year. So pre-order now. Christina, what's up? It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Thank you so much for scheduling this and getting this set up.
It's been my absolute pleasure. I've been looking forward to this a ton. For those who may not know, you and I did work together at HubSpot at the same time, but we didn't really work together that much, which is kind of surprising in hindsight.
Yeah, I feel like we should have, but the stuff that we were kind of brought together on, it was like quick dash and then like go our separate ways again.
Absolutely. I tend to remember NFT stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was an NFT project.
It's weird times, but how are you doing? Is everything good? You excited about the book?
I am excited about the book. I will acknowledge though that I think it's Hemingway that said it's like writing is easy. You just go to the typewriter and you bleed. I just will need to add like a little caveat of that. There is no greater humbling experience. If you want to know how loud your inner hater can be, write a book because it will yell at you and be like, who are you? Who do you think you are? You're not that smart. This could be written by someone so much smarter, better, a bigger expert than you. Like it's been really transformative for me. It's made me really look at how I post on social differently, how I communicate with clients differently, but it's also just been very humbling.
It's good to hear that imposter syndrome doesn't actually go away, regardless of how accomplished you may be.
I think it gets louder, if I'm honest.
That's probably a good sign, though, right?
I think so. I think I wrote a blog about it like ages ago, and it was that imposter syndrome is actually a symptom of being passionate about what you care about, that you want to protect it from frauds, even if you yourself are that fraud. And that's what it is. It's like if you don't care, you wouldn't have imposter syndrome about it. But because you're protective of it and you want it to be good, you kind of self-reject.
That's the coolest definition of imposter syndrome I've ever heard. Because it's always like, oh, you don't know what you don't think you know or whatever. It's always some like convoluted thing. Like I think that's a really nice way of thinking about it, where it's just like you care. This is genuinely something you're passionate about and it's important to you. So you push back on yourself in a way. And that's really nice.
Yeah, no, I think so too.
Awesome. Well, what do people need to know about you?
For the book, David Armano, one of my favorite people on the planet, he was gracious enough to write the foreword. And in the foreword, he calls me a customer empath, which I think out of all the things I've been called probably gets to the heart of the matter a little bit more. I'm always the person that wants to figure out what people are thinking. How are they behaving? How are they feeling about things? Whether that be through social listening or through surveys or through just general customer interviews, or see how they're talking about us and how they're conveying our message versus others and other brands. So I think when it boils down to it, if you look back at everything I've always done, I have a social media background, but before that I was a teacher. And my strength as a teacher was I loved the students that didn't get it quickly. I loved the students who had learning differences and like, how can I figure out a way to get it to make sense for them? And so that's kind of carried throughout my entire career. So I got to go with customer empath. I got to steal David's words.
Own it. Yeah. That's really cool. And I think it's actually interesting because like within the marketing space overall, there are a fair amount of teachers turned marketers.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are always the people who are truly most empathetic, who are most patient, who understand how to actually convey things in a way that others will receive and understand well. So, Ms. Customer Empath.
Yes.
I feel like that needs to be your LinkedIn headline.
It might be after the book comes out. We'll see. We'll see what the sentiment is.
I think it'll be strong. What is one thing you're world class at?
Connecting people. For lack of a better phrase, I'm that person that I will walk into the grocery store and someone will see me and tell me their life story. Unprovoked. I don't know how. I don't know why. But I'll have people come up to me and tell me things that I have no business knowing. I have like secrets, like a little Pandora's box in my head that should not be filled with things, but it's filled with things. On social, I'm a firm believer that if you have a platform, you need to use your platform to make things better. So if that's sharing jobs for people, or if that's sharing GoFundMes from like the recent LA fires, but it takes seconds to make someone's day a little bit more impactful, maybe a little bit more hopeful. I think that just that connection with people and making people realize that like, I can't give you $1 million, but I do genuinely care. And I do want to use what I can have control over to make this a better situation for you. And so I think that would probably be it.
That's beautiful. Before we dive into process, I need to know some of what's in that Pandora's box. Like what's the...
Just weird things like, okay, so there was this is going to be so weird. About 3 or 4 years ago, my husband and I went to Asheville, and we love Asheville. It's still devastated. They're still rebuilding from the hurricanes. It's really heartbreaking. If you haven't seen what's going down there, please Google it. And they still need a lot of help to rebuild. But we went to the art district because I kind of joke that no matter where I am, I'd rather be in an art museum. I'd just rather be there. And so we went to the art district, and I was at one of the galleries, and I was walking around, and the artist walked up to me and started talking to me. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I'd like to learn more about your art and all this other stuff. By the time I left, 30 minutes later, I knew about a court case that he was a part of. I knew about like just stuff I should not know, that like client privilege stuff that I was like, why are you telling me this? And my husband will say, like, you always make a face. So it's like, I know you're getting deluged with things and I need to come and save you. So he did. But things like that, it's like things I become a therapist, like a walking therapist for people. And it's for whatever reason, they see me and they're like, I can talk to her. And I was like, I hope it made your day better. But like, now I need to like grab a coffee and figure out like why that just happened. But things like that.
Was the art worth it? Was it worth the conversation?
I think so. Yeah, it was beautiful. But it's weird to have that experience and then look at the art again because now it's coupled.
Now you know the real story behind it.
Yeah, now I know the real story behind it. The story is not like pretty, so it's like, oh, okay. So it's like coupled now. It has a little bit of like artistic baggage.
Well, the best art comes from tragedy, right?
True.
Let's get back to connecting people because I have way too many questions. This happened with someone earlier in the season as well, where like they shared something. I was like, I need to go down this tangent for a while, but connecting people is really important. And I think within the marketing space overall, like what we're trying to do is connect with people and connect people with each other, right? So it's in a way like a broad definition, right? When you think about connecting people, is there a lens that you think about it through?
I think about it as being unapologetically human. I think the stuff that we naturally gravitate towards, even if we don't know why, if you really kind of go down that rabbit hole, you'll realize that it's relatable, that it makes you stop because it feels so deeply human. And it's wild to me. I'm not anti-AI. I feel like I need to preface that. But I wish that we treated human connection the way that we're treating AI, especially in the tech sphere, where we want to embed AI into absolutely everything, but we don't embed humanity or empathy into everything. Like, why does AI get to live in every department, but us caring about our customers and their experience can only live in a specific department? That doesn't make sense to me. And I find that actually is why there are a lot of companies, their customer experience is they're really capping it themselves because they've limited to where it lives and where it's like monitored when it should live across every department. If you're hearing this and you're embedding AI into everywhere, like good for you, but like embed a little humanity into it too, like just as many departments.
So how do you, if we're talking embedding humanity, where do you start?
So let's say that I have a client come on and they want to know like, hey, this is what our goals are. This is what we want to do. Or sometimes it's like, hey, we're not doing what we want to be doing, but we don't even know where to start. I always start with a very thorough audit. I talk to members of the team across departments. I do a full customer journey map. I look at social listening to see like, how are people talking about you online? I look at your customer stories. I look at your reviews, like basically an internal and external view of what is actually going on here and then what is in place. So you might say like, hey, we have a really robust customer communication system. Great. But then when I look, it's you just send them a weekly email. Like, are you communicating with your customers? Absolutely. Yes, you are. Like cookies and cream for you. But that's not a good customer experience necessarily. And so looking at all those paths to figure out what does today look like? What is currently in place? What is working that's currently in place? What's working but could be vastly improved? And then what is just like shooting themselves in the foot? And then do a start, stop, continue based off of that information. And then building off of, all right, so what do we need to start doing? What's missing? What are the quick wins that we can start implementing so that you can start getting yourself closer to the goal and you can start seeing tangible things? I really like starting with quick wins and being very clear that these are quick wins because improving customer sentiment is a long journey. People are not going to hate you and then love you tomorrow. Like that is just not how it's going to work. There's not a single marketer that can make that happen. There's not a single campaign or Super Bowl ad that's going to fix that. So you need those quick wins to remind you that you are getting traction, that you are making progress, and that we're headed in the right direction. And then continue to monitor. All right, so we got this quick win, but did it land the way that we thought it would? Is it as big of a quick win as we thought it was going to be? Or did it kind of fall flat? It didn't really kind of move the needle the way that we expected. And then constantly monitoring, constantly keeping your customers close and empowering your internal teams to feel like they can have a say. Because there's nothing worse than someone saying, hey, I need help. And your response is, I'd love to help you. I can't. I got to send you over there. And you do that because you feel like it's not your ownness to do that. Like, I'm not in customer success, therefore I can't help this person. Why can't you have empowerment strategies in place so that everyone can help? And that can be a mixture of AI, that can be a mixture of knowledge bases, that can be a mixture of guides, customer education, whatever that looks like. But why does it always have to be, you raised your hand, you're in a dire situation, you're frustrated, you're angry, and I'm going to hear you. And you're like, great, now I'm going to get help. And you just hot potato me to somebody else. And then what happens if that person isn't the right person either? And then they got a hot potato. Someone that was angry or frustrated or confused has now had that situation be made so much worse, because in that hot potato play, what you've done is you've diminished trust, because now they're like, I don't know if this person can even help me. So it came from like, I have this problem, but now I have the additional problem of, who's even going to fix it? Like, I'm calling the company who made this product and you can't solve it for me. So who's going to solve it? Maybe it doesn't get solved at all. So that erosion of trust happens because you've isolated who can actually solve the problem instead of empowering your entire team to help. If you think someone's going to help you, you don't care what their title is. I promise. They don't care what your title is until they have to elevate it to someone who will be yelled at.
And that's kind of it, right? Like, the running joke is, I want to speak to the manager, but, who's your supervisor? And the reality is it should never, ever get to that point. And it gets to that point. Like, I know from my own experience, like, if I have to talk to a manager, like, it's usually not even something that the person I was speaking to is responsible for or could help with. It's my own frustration, my own anger. And the person I was speaking to doesn't have the tools or the resources to diffuse the situation. And that's never a situation you want to be in.
And it's conditioned. So the whole Karen, I want to speak to your manager behavior exists because companies have made it happen in such a way that the only way you can get certain things resolved is if you talk to a manager. Love or hate that relationship or that behavior in general, it is conditioned.
Yeah.
I know that if I talk to a manager and I have a little temper tantrum, chances are I'm more likely to be helped. And so people are acting out of their minds because they think that's the only alternative to the solution. Now, I'm not condoning that behavior. I'm absolutely not. It's wild. But it exists because there was a need that was not being met. And they figured out, this is the workaround. How can I make sure that I get heard? It's the workaround. I'm going to yell at you on Twitter and write a whole thread about how you're making me angry. I may have too much time on my hands, but I'm doing that specifically because if enough people see it, chances are the brand will reach out and will fix it. If they were fixing it proactively, there's absolutely no need for me to go online and do a whole thing. It's conditioned behavior.
For sure. And if they didn't raise my internet prices, I wouldn't have to do it in the first place, right?
What?
You've done the audit now. And like, there's even within this audit, we could spend a lot of time, right? Like, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, because even like empowering the team, I think, is really important. Like, understanding how to monitor, like even building out those quick wins. Like, but what are you looking for within that audit to know that there's something specific that you want to action on, whether it be a quick win or something bigger?
I look for silos. Silos are the first red flag that I look for, because a lot of teams, you have teams that want to help people. They aren't like behind their computer being like, I'm going to make someone's day horrible for absolutely no, I don't even know this person, but I'm going to just make it rough for no reason because I'm bored today. They're not doing that, but it might be that their hands are tied. So the first thing I look for is silos, because I find that is the biggest divide between companies. That's also why when they scale, customer experience usually dips. And it's because the bigger it becomes, the more infrastructure needs to be in place. And you need to isolate these specific things. You have more like what was once generic becomes like hyper specific titles with like this person has 1 to 2 jobs versus like when we were an earlier stage company, that person was wearing all of these hats. The problem is that infrastructure comes with silos. You're literally creating the silos as you build. Like, this department is this. But how often are those departments collaborating? Not talking, collaborating. Because if you don't know what each other's doing and you don't know how each other is touching the customer, you could be outdoing each other's efforts. You could be undoing each other's efforts instead of helping. And I think that in this land of attribution, brands have so focused on who gets the credit for the sale that we forget that every single person has a role to play in how that customer finds them, how that customer is perceived, how that customer is taken care of, and what they overall view of the brand is. Like, you're not going to give the webmaster a sales award, but that website could make or break whether someone wants to work with you or not. If the website looks crappy, you're probably not going to do it. Versus if the website is well designed and well structured and it's easy for me to find everything I need to know and I can set up a demo and I can learn all these things, that website has made me more likely to convert. But you're never going to get that conversion seen to, like, the person who made the website's never going to get that sales conversion. They're never going to get credit for it. Same thing with social. All these social media platforms, well, except for Pinterest, which I love, they don't want you to send external links because they don't want people to leave. So you, as the economy's been dipping, more and more companies have been putting pressure on social media teams saying, like, you have to prove that you're actually bringing in revenue. And the only way to do that is either to do social listening and wait for someone to be like, I specifically paid for your product because I saw this meme.
Which happens all the time, obviously.
Happens all the,
Yeah.
That's how we talk. That's how we as customers do things. Yeah. So what you have is you have this Hunger Games style attribution play where you have departments actually fighting against each other. We see this in sales and marketing all the time. They see each other as combatants instead of, if we work together, we can actually, sales, I can help you do your job. You can help me do my job. Instead, because we have this like attribution Hunger Games, we are seeing each other as like, that person just makes my job harder. That person is just trying to get credit. That person is just trying to do this. Instead of needing the collaboration across the entire department, across the entire company to make sure that we're actually helping each other. And so silos is the first thing I look for because that will tell me all I need to know. And then I can come to the client and say, like, here are the silos that you have. This is what's actually really capping the limit of what you can do here. Here's how you can start breaking down those silos. And I need to know that you are willing to do this because I can recommend all of these things. But if your departments are never going to talk to each other, I'm never going to be able to help you, like flat out, because that is what is at the root of it. It's very much looking at the symptoms and trying to figure out what's causing those symptoms. And a lot of times it's really big companies, it's silos. I mean, if you think about let's say that you go shopping this weekend and you go into a very small mom and pop store and you have an amazing experience. Maybe you're regular and they even know you by name. Amazing. Great. You're checking out and you're saying like, oh, I love this store. It's my favorite. Oh, thank you so much. We've had this store for 10 years. You're actually getting to talk to the owner. Now compare that to a SaaS company, a large SaaS company today. It is like night and day.
Yep.
If they know your name, it's because you're a VIP or you're a pain in their butt. You were like their top client, or you were the person who's always waving the flag to talk to the manager.
They know your name because you're in the CRM and it's on their screen.
Yeah. But they don't know. There's like that emotional connection, that bond is not there. And for you to be able to talk to a CEO or someone on the C-suite of a brand of that size, it's unheard of. Meanwhile, in this small business, you're actually being helped by the person who's like, this is their business. And so that's silos, that's layers, that's separating the people who built the business from the people who are actually paying and becoming customers. And it hurts. And so figuring out what you need to look for as the red flags, as those layers get bigger, that's what really counts. That's what's really going to make or break these companies as they're trying to improve their CX.
So, I mean, in terms of these silos, then I get that this is a major, major oversimplification on my part, but does going from like last touch attribution to multi-touch attribution, like, does that start breaking things down? Or of course there are other things, but like the battle for credit, I know is a big one, as is the kind of idea of specialization, right? Like we have a CS department because the CS department is going to be the best at providing customer support. Meanwhile, customers exist within every aspect of the journey, right? Like they're on social, they're visiting your website, they're engaging with your newsletter, hopefully. They're in the sales process, they're in the product. That's why it needs to be everywhere. But like, as we're thinking about breaking down these silos, what gets that ball rolling?
I think the multi-touch attribution is a good start because it gets rid of the pressure. I think the one thing that I would recommend doing is shadowing the other departments. And it doesn't have to be treated like you're in CS and you want to be in sales. But I think it's important for CS to listen to sales and how sales is pitching the product, because they might be pitching it on a way that like, yes, our product can do that, but not at the price range that they are looking for. So that's going to become something that the CS has to fix later on. Or sales could be listening in on CS calls and hearing that like, this is the one problem that a lot of people have more than others, or this is the thing that they never hear complaints about. So they know they can pitch that and be like, well, with our company, I talk to our CS team all the time. And even when they do get questions from customers, the customers never complain about blank. So that's definitely one of our highlights. Like little things that you don't know until you know. Leadership, the further away they are from the customer, the further they are from their teams as well. So they're getting memos, they're seeing Asana breakdowns, and they're seeing like decks, but that's never the full story. And so they also need to be seeing what's happening. I think that would also help as AI is being integrated more, is they're going to realize where AI is going to be a better fit versus not, instead of it just like being plugged in and being like, all right, that'll solve all of our problems. They should be shadowing the teams that are using those AI tools to not only be like, I have an idea, like play in the sandbox as a leader. Like, this is how I would use AI if I was in your job, in your shoes. Is that viable? Is that actually possible? Or is that something that is just not honestly going to help? Or like, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't take off the main problems of my job. I think having that shadowing kind of understanding, it will create more camaraderie, because then you won't feel like you're because there's tons of departments. There's people in sales teams right now who feel like they're carrying the company. There's people in marketing who feel like they're carrying the company. There's people in CS who feel like they're carrying the company. They feel like they're the only ones working while everyone else is doing God knows what.
Yep.
You need to be in their shoes. You need to play in their sandbox, and you need to see what their daily life is. It's going to give you empathy. It's going to help you understand those updates when they're coming in, because you're going to be able to see what all that took. It's also going to make you feel more human. It's going to create what I think is a very understanding culture, because you're actually able to truly empathize with somebody, and you're going to be able to understand how all of the moving pieces work. If I tell you that CS could help sales, I could write like a thesis on that. But actually sitting down with the CS team and listening to calls and seeing like what their day-to-day is like will teach you more about the product than any deck will.
And you know what's interesting about this? Because like you always hear, listen to sales calls, but you never really hear listen to CS calls. And it's such a good point. Yeah, it's like you can't really have one without the other here, because again, it's you know, and you touched on it a few moments ago, but like what you're promised on the way in isn't always what you get once you're in the house. And those calls are sometimes so much more telling, because like, hey, I have a problem. All love to salespeople, but like, oh, you have a problem? Well, guess what? We're the best solution for that problem. And then you get in, it's like, well, we're only like a so-so solution to that problem, and good luck, I guess. And then someone's cleaning up that mess. So using that almost as a like, there's like a content flywheel play within that as well, where CS informs sales could inform marketing, and it's a beautiful revenue org that we have right there that's collaborating and communicating and working with one another to help each other out. I mean, that sounds like a beautiful thing. As I say it, I'm like, wow, that's, the clouds part and the rainbow. And
it makes sense though. It's just, you have to set aside the time. And what does that look like? So like the CS calls, for example, not only will that help sales, but that could help product. Let's say that you continue to get the exact same problem over and over and over again, but it's something that you don't solve. That's a Hail Mary to product, to be like, this needs to be in the roadmap. If 75% of your CS calls are basically acknowledging some kind of need for this kind of ability, or maybe to do the job better or whatever, that's a huge call out for product to be able to stand up and be the hero. And then to be able to say, we heard you. You've had this very clear problem. Product is now going to build it and ship it. And then sales is able to now be like, and we've been listening to our customers, and this is why we have this new thing launched, because this is something our customers. So like, as a potential customer, I'm hearing that you weren't perfect, which, let's be honest, no product is perfect. So we all know there's going to be iterations, there's going to be growth, there's going to be new launches and stuff like that. But to be able to say, we specifically listened to our customers, this is something our customers needed and requested, we shipped it, and so now it's added. So now that I'm talking to you as a potential customer, you don't have to think about having our product in the days of that not being a thing. You now get this new thing. And you've set and talking about conditioning again, now you're conditioning those customers to know, whether you say it out loud or not, if you have problems in the future, we're going to listen. And our product team might have new things because of something that you need in the future. You're conditioning them to understand how they're going to be treated.
You're also giving them a sense of ownership, right? Which
Yeah.
makes them feel like it ties them into the product even deeper because it's like, hey, not only did they hear me and listen, but like this came from my mouth. Like this
Yep.
feature exists because because I spoke to management.
But honestly, that's marketing too, though.
Yeah.
Because then, like the people who specifically asked for a feature update or a feature request, those people are going to promote that launch better than your marketing team will because it's their baby. Like you said,
Yep.
this exists because I asked for it. So this is like they're going to act like they were in the code. Like it's their baby now. And so they want it to be successful. They want it to do well because that is further proof of like, you should have listened to me. I was brilliant and I told you what you needed. You listened and here it is. And now everyone's excited about it. It's that whole thing. So it's ownership, but also that becomes a marketing push for them. They want people to know that they were a part of that.
All right. So we've developed empathy, right? We've also instituted multi-touch attribution and shadowing. Easy peasy, overnight fixes.
Like you do, just snap your fingers.
Here we go. So, once you start breaking down the silos and people do start collaborating more in the organization and there is more healthy conversation, what happens next?
You have to have an open mind and understand that it's never going to be perfect. So you're never going to do like all the recommendations and then like the clouds part, everything's better. Nothing ever has to be changed again. Mm-hmm. You still have to continue to iterate, but find opportunities to monitor. All right, this is in place. Now I can look for the next level of red flags. Now I can look for, so like great example, this would be like, all right, we're collaborating more. Cool. That means that you're probably going to put more meetings on my calendar, which means I'm going to have a lot more paperwork, a lot more things to prepare for. A lot of time I'm not going to be at my desk working. I'm not going to be as productive. I'm going to be sitting in meetings. So a lot of the things that you're going to be doing, you're going to be creating essentially new problems that you're going to have to fix. So if we understand that ahead of time, then we can start preparing for that. So that could be, okay, I don't want my team to sit in meetings from 9 to 5 every day. I want them to actually be able to do work so they're not having to just do the work once all the meetings are over. So what does collaboration need to look like in order to minimize that? Is it that there is a weekly Zoom, or is it like there's a weekly Loom video that breaks down all the major findings that you need to do? But I do think that we need to be more human. I think the idea of like everything has to happen, this is going to sound really bad since I came from HubSpot, so this might be they're kind of...
It's safe space.
They love a deck at HubSpot.
Yes, they do.
But a deck will eventually feel like, I can't read any more decks. I've hit my limit of decks. And I'm not the only person that feels that way sometimes. And so I really love the idea of, all right, you want me to hear from, I'm going to pick on CS again. You want me to hear from the CS team. Let them do a Loom that is something where I can watch it at 1.5 or 2 times speed, and they're going to talk me through their day. They're going to talk me through their findings. They're not going to talk me through a deck because all the decks bleed together. It's just a sea of bullet points in my brain. Mm-hmm. Versus if you give me a Loom video and I can able to be like, this is a human I am associating with this department and what they're doing. And because I'm seeing them, I'm able to hear their tone. I'm able to hear like how they present themselves. What does that look like? I'm able to have more of a human connection, which means it'll probably stick with me longer. I'll be able to differentiate it because I can be like, this person is this department, that person is that department, instead of this deck and this deck and this deck and this deck. Maybe it's a Loom video that's like, once a week, we're going to give you the major highlights that you need to know about. Here's the good, here's the bad, here's the ugly, here's how you can help. And then I can watch it at 2 times speed, get through my day. It's one less meeting, but I'm getting everything I would have gotten from the meeting anyway, but without it taking a whole chunk for everybody that has to be on that call.
I think that's great because, right, obviously meetings are expensive as well, and you're saving a ton of money, you're saving a ton of time. But I think back to any time I've ever had an issue on the collaborative front when there's not a person there, when it's like, oh God, product, can you believe it? Like it's just nameless, faceless organization in a way. But then when it's just like, oh, Christina sent this over, it's very different. Like I may not love what you have to say, but I will hear it. I will respect it. I will push back if I have to push back respectfully again. But it's much easier than, oh, so-and-so, like how many random decks did we get presented where it's like, oh, this came from this department.
I have so many decks.
Okay, cool. Like, I don't know how this is relevant, why this is relevant, or what it's going to do for me. So I'm just going to sit here because I have to. It's mandated by my manager.
Yeah.
So, and at the end of the half hour, I will get on with my day and forget that this happened. So like that human connection, I think is so critical. And I love that it's not just human to human from the standpoint of like company to customer. It's also like within the company, like, we're all on the same team. We're all teammates. Like, know people's names, know what they do, listen when they speak, be respectful, be kind.
Yeah. And I think that bleeds because I fully believe there is a correlation between employee experience and customer experience. If the employee is happy, then they're going to be in a better mood. They're not going to be as quick to be frustrated. If they feel valued, then they in turn are going to make the customer feel valued because that is a part of their shared experience. Versus if someone's having a bad day at work, they might not be as empathetic to a customer as they would have been. And it's not, I always assume best intent. So I'm not thinking like, I'm going to ruin this person's day because my day's ruined. Like that's not the logic that is occurring. But you might, like your fuse might be shorter, or you might not have, like if your day's really bad, you might honestly not have any empathy left. Like I'm saving all my empathy for myself because I'm having such a bad day. I don't have any left to give anyone else. But that's not the customer's fault. But they're going to feel it. They're going to feel that like this person is not having a good time. This person doesn't want to help me. This person, whatever. And so with all the layoffs that we've been seeing with all these companies, that also plays a huge role because the people who tend to be paid the least and the people who tend to be laid off first is customer success and customer support because people think it can be automated. They think that it can be turned like an AI bot will solve all the problems. Yeah. So what you're doing for budget is you are probably increasing the customer's price, but you're also cutting off the first layer of customer contact that they have. So you're giving them a less human experience for more money. Customers aren't stupid. They notice. And they also, if your CS team or your advocacy team or your marketing team or yourself, like anybody, if they're really good at their job, there are customers who know them by name. There are customers who connect with them, who want to follow them on social, who want to be friends, who, if they're going to a conference and they know they're going to be there, they want to see them and have a coffee. So they have connections with these people. And so when you slice that layer off, you're not just getting rid of a line in a spreadsheet. You're getting rid of the human that they actually connected with at your brand. So you've dehumanized your brand by removing the human that they associated with it. And I don't think enough customers and brands, employees are vocalizing this or really kind of like acknowledging that this is a thing. And so if your culture at your company is not healthy, your customer experience will not be healthy either because you can't lie for that long. You can't have empathy for your customer, but have no empathy for anyone on your team. Like that's not how it works. And so it very much bleeds into it.
That's such a good point. You're expecting people to treat your customers well. You got to treat them well first. It's such a just reflection of what's going on inside the house. Mm-hmm. Like how you show up outside the house is a reflection of what you're seeing inside the house. And it's interesting to think about through this lens of connecting people and through this lens of CS because it's just like, that's just what they do. Like they're cool. I don't joke about this lightly, but it's just like, oh, they're just CS robots in a way. Like they'll always be pleasant. They'll always be happy. They'll always take care of the customer. It's like, no, they're CS humans and they need to be taken care of as well. And especially in this age of, like AI coming into it, I think about enablement a lot. And I know you touched on it earlier as well. And, empowerment and the idea of AI replacing CS instead of AI empowering CS is pretty absurd to me. Yes. Where I think it's just this fundamental misunderstanding of what the technology is there for and what it's going to do. And I know you've heard me say this where it's like AI is here to do your dirty work. It's not here to do your thinking. And too many people just don't get that. And then they get into the situation where it's like, okay, fine. Well, we'll outsource this to the bots. And then the bots can't do it. And you have to go back to the people. And now you've lost all that trust and you're just starting from scratch. And you said it right from the jump, right? You're not just going to gain trust because you changed one thing or another. It's a cumulative effect. And as I think about what we've discussed, right? And like in doing the audit and identifying the silos and iterating further and like looking for those other red flags, right? A lot of this feels reactive.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are there things to think about in terms of maybe making it more proactive, or is there an opportunity for connecting people in a more proactive way?
I think there is. I think that it needs to come from leadership because if it's someone from like the CS team or customer marketing or sales, and they're like, I'm going to be more proactive about this, usually it will be seen as a divergence from their work. So it'll be like, well, you're not going to be as productive because you're working on this like side project that we haven't approved. And so a lot of companies, they wind up being reactive. They wind up caring about customer marketing or customer success once their retention number drops. So like the retention rate drops and like everything's crazy and like now it's a fire drill when the house has been on fire for a while. It's just, this is the alarm part of the thing. So I think what it boils down to it is one thing to be proactive is to really look at what customer centricity is and not just saying you're customer centric, but being able to figure out what does that actively look like for you and for your teams? So when you say you're customer centric, what does that mean to you? And then what does that actually look like? Like, how does that manifest itself within the company, within the customer experience, all those things? And then thinking about how you're really pushing them through. So what I find is really interesting is when we look at the flywheel or we look at a funnel and we think about those individual pieces, we usually think about like who owns each part of it. And then what is the goal of each part of it? And then like what content would you create for each part of it? But we don't talk about empathy maps at each part of it. And we don't talk about nudges. So I'm a massive fan, and I've talked a little bit about conditioning, but I'm a huge fan of game theory and a huge fan of behavioral science. And we talk about like, I'll write a blog piece that talks about this, and this will be for the awareness stage. But how is that getting them to the next? And they'll be like, well, we have a CTA. I'm like, that CTA is doing a lot of work. Like, what are you actually doing to nudge them to get them into the next one? And what are they feeling, seeing, saying, thinking at each of these stages? Because if you can figure out their headspace in each of these, then you're more likely to figure out how you need to nudge them and make them feel psychologically safe to go to the next phase. And instead, what we see a lot of companies do is they'll do deceptive patterns or dark patterns instead. So the whole goal is, what do I need to do to get them to convert? A really great example of this is Instagram. Instagram, before they did the shop. They had a shop for Instagram. The bottom like third button or whatever was your notifications. So they know that when you open your Instagram app, chances are you're going to go to your notifications because that's where your dopamine lives. That's where, oh, they liked me, or oh, they thought my picture was pretty, or someone commented. I'm going to go there and I'm immediately going to get dopamine. When they put the shop in Instagram, they put the shop button where that button was. That is not an accident. That is a dark pattern or a deceptive pattern. They know what you're conditioned to do. And so now instead of you getting your dopamine through that, they're hoping that you'll click on it enough times that you'll go into shop. And so what we've done is we've turned, instead of thinking about like, what is the actual customer experience? How are we nudging them and giving them the psychological safety so that they can convert? We figured out, how can I trick them based on how I know they behave so they'll convert, which is great in the short term because look at all the conversions, horrible in the long term because as soon as someone realizes what you did, they're like, you tricked me.
Yep.
So you don't go from like, we lost trust. We go from like, I hate you. I think you're a bad person. I never. So like customer lifetime value goes out the window because as soon as they can leave, they're going to leave or they're going to stop that behavior. They're going to like teach themselves how to get out of that conditioned behavior so you don't benefit from it anymore. And so, but it's those little things. It's how are we proactively looking at our customers? How are we thinking about how we talk to them? What does that look like? And I find that we do a lot of the work really well. We get about 80% perfect. And then we take the shady way out.
Yeah.
Like, I understand you so well. I understand exactly why you're here. I understand the buttons that you press. I understand why you're doing this. And then the end is, how can I get that behavior to be used against them for them to convert?
Well, it's like they spend so much time thinking of the scheme and spending so much time implementing the scheme. They could have used it to apply the right situation, to continue building trust and developing. And that's a choice. And I think just called out leadership's role a lot of times. Like it's on them to either say, don't do that or identify where it's happening and call that out. But I don't know. I think this ties back to that point about like everything being associated with some sort of number or whatnot, or who gets credit. We're like, well, hey, I came up with the scheme. I tricked them. I manipulated them and we got the revenue. So I'm the winner now. And no one cares about the way to that path. It's just about closing the deal. And that sucks. That's just not a great way to run a company or to build a team or to build trust or to do any of those things. Because like you said, you develop that customer behavior, you build that habit, and everyone knows like habits are generally easy to build, but they're hard to break. And you're actively just trying to trick people. Like it feels like there was like a secret memo somewhere, right? That was just like, we're just gonna hit them with notifications, and then watch this. And we see it, we know it. Like people aren't dumb, and that's maybe the other side of it, like the respect, right? Like making sure people have the right respect or get the right respect.
And I think too, what they wind up thinking too is that their work exists in a vacuum. So I think the best way to see this is for Black Friday or Cyber Monday, you'll see emails from all of these different vendors that you basically, any vendor who has your email is emailing you on Black Friday or Cyber Monday. And a lot of them are doing the whole like, oops, we've extended the sale. We made a big uh-oh. And like the codes still work. Like
this code's worked since November 1st. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. So you think that you're being clever and it's fine. But what happens is 10 other companies are doing the exact same thing. So the subject lines are all the same. And so what you see is you see these people who've been sending their emails to maybe get like a 10% off or to get a newsletter or whatever. And so I see a lot of this every single year. You see people going through and unsubscribing and marking all these things as spam and be like, all right, it's time to clean out my inbox. Not it's time to shop. It's time to clean out my inbox because I can see these red flags clear as day. Look at all these people doing the exact same tactics. And I think that comes down to it too, is I think we have made every single thing in marketing a tactic. Like everything's a tactic. And so everything is turned into this very clear pattern that once enough brands do it, you're like, I know exactly what this is. I recognize this now. And then it looks like a tactic. So that also dehumanizes the brand because it's like, I know exactly why you're emailing me. I know exactly why you're doing this instead of you want to talk to me.
Yeah.
And so and AI is making it worse because now you have AI like comments on LinkedIn and on social. You have pop-ups everywhere where I can't cancel any subscription without an AI bot trying to like put a gun to my head. And I have to go through like the entire thing process in 5 or 6 different ways to be like, just let me go. Just let me go. But it's those things, is we have these tactics. And so it's the whole idea of it's the idea of like, if you close your hands on sand, the sand pours out. But if you keep your hands open, the sand will stay there. It's that kind of thing. We're gripping these people so hard and doing every tactic in the book to keep them, that's actually pushing them further away. It's why they don't trust us. It's why they hate seeing our emails in their inbox. It's why they're just like, I just want the product and then I want to go home. Like, I don't want to. You go from people who you would want to talk to you, now they're like, no, please leave me alone.
That's a soundbite right there.
It's true though. It's sad, yeah. But it's true.
I think this is great food for thought in terms of like how to be proactive and how not to fall down these dark patterns. As we start to wrap up, like, are there other considerations or other things that, listeners should be thinking about just in terms of connecting people or building that customer experience that they should be building versus the tactic that has been given to them?
I think what it boils down to, I think it was Maya Angelou, is like people will forget like what you said and what you did, but they'll never forget like how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. It's always that. Because when brands are talking about like what they want to build almost this like cult-like following. They want people to love them. They don't just want the money. They want the loyalty. They want love. They want the evangelism. You don't get human love without human actions to trigger it. Like an AI bot is not going to get someone to love you. Not in the same way that like someone who showed up for them, someone who was like, hey, I know you're going to this conference and I'm going to grab a coffee. I know you're in like back-to-back sessions. Can I grab a coffee for you? That's little, but it's everything. You need to look at the people who are on your team who are really showing up in a really unapologetically human way, because those are the people that your customers love. Those are the people that your customers think about when they ever think about leaving, because they could leave your product, but they don't want to leave that person. That's why community works. The community makes the product stickier. Because if they cancel, they're not just canceling you, they're canceling their participation in the community. But that's a human element. And so if you're going to AI everything, expect an AI level of interaction back. It'll be cold, it'll be automated, it won't have empathy.
That's a great hot take right there. Input in is input out. And do unto others as you would have done unto you, right? Like the golden rule. I love this. Christina, where can we see this process next?
So my book that I've written, it's coming out in September. It covers a lot in these chapters. So you'll see chapters on social listening, storytelling. How does AI impact? And it's not all negative, but it talks about how there needs to be a really thoughtful hybrid approach. What needs to stay AI? What needs to stay human? And so whether it's emotional or it's efficiency. Someone wants a problem solved fast, they have no problem talking to AI. If someone is really mad or has like a hyper level of emotional connection to what's going on, the AI is just going to make them angrier. They need a human. There's conversations about social media and community. And there's an entire chapter, entire part. The second part is all about how to build community. Step-by-step instructions, how I would build a community, like literally lifts that part of my brain out and puts it in the page. So that'll give you a lot of food for thought there. And then you can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on LinkedIn, hear my ramblings about anything and everything.
I love it. Thank you so much for this. This has been a ton of fun, really informative. For the viewers, listeners, please pre-order Christina's book. I'll make sure there's a link where links go. And make sure you give her a follow on Twitter and LinkedIn, just as instructed, because you will not be disappointed. Christina, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely.
Anytime.